Good morning, students, and today for our Reader's Workshop mini lesson, we are going to talk about making text-to-self connections. Does anybody know what making text-to-self connections are, or can explain anything to me? Samantha?
Text-to-self connections, you want me to tell you what it's about?
Yeah.
I think it's about when you read a book and you make connections from the book about your real life.
Yeah, that's very good. So I'm going to write it up here on our anchor chart in our own words. So text-to-self connections is the topic we are learning. And what are they is what Sam already said. Experiences from the story we can relate to. All right, so does anybody know why it's important to make text-to-self connections?
I know. I think it's important to make text-to-self connections because it makes it so that people like me can understand the story better if I can relate it to my life.
Yeah, that's very good. So it's important because it helps us understand the story. I'm going to put a little light bulb for one of our picture and our visual representation. All right, so it helps us to make sure that we understand the story by relating our experiences to the book. Now, there are a couple different ways that I can think of sayings or quotes that I came up with that you can say to yourself when you're reading. Does anybody have any ideas or ways that we can relate to stories?
I think one could be, well, not really sure. Maybe you should just tell me.
All right, good. So I came up with some ideas that maybe it could help you think about when you're reading. So I'm going to say different ways we can relate. Now, the first thing I would say to myself when I'm relating to the story is I will tell what the story reminds me of. Like something it reminds me of. Oh, like a day I was happy, or a day I got ice cream with my parents. That maybe something like that happened to a character in the story. So I'll put it in quotation marks, something you can say. I will tell what the story reminds me of. And then I'll have a little person here that you can see that's thinking while they're reading their book about something that reminds them. All right. The second thing we can think about when we are reading is I can tell about a time something similar happened to me. For example, maybe you hurt yourself riding your bike, and also another character in the story was riding their bike with their friends, and they may have tripped and fell. So I can tell about a time something similar happened to me. Now, another way we can also think about this is I can tell about a time I had the same feeling as a character. So maybe you were also sad about the same reason, like losing something very special to you, and maybe a character isn't crying, maybe you cried about it too as well. So I can tell about a time I had the same feeling as a character. This could be a happy with a smiley face to represent it was a happy time, or a sad time, like something you lost, like I already said before. Maybe you were angry about something, or maybe something surprised you. So now with I'm telling you what text-to-self connections are and some different ways you can think about by making personal connections as well, I'm going to talk about a book we have read before in the past. Now, we have read the story called Miss Nelson is Missing. And this is about, can anybody tell me what the story was about?
A time when kids in a classroom, their teacher went missing once.
Yes, that's correct. So Miss Nelson was the teacher, and the students were so bad that the teacher wanted to teach them a lesson. So she disguised herself, remember, as, you may not remember her name, is Miss Viola Swamp.
Oh,
and
that's right.
Yeah, that's correct. And so she dressed up as a very mean teacher, and she came in to teach the students. So now I can relate some personal connections with this story, so I'm going to demonstrate some of these for you. So the first one I have is when, at the beginning of the story, like I already said, the students were being very bad. So, can you guys think of a time where you guys have been very bad?
Yeah, I remember a time when my parents got mad at me because I refused to clean up my toys.
No. I can also relate to a time when I was very bad. I was acting up in front of my parents too when I was in a meeting at their work, so my dad had to send me out of his room. It wasn't a very happy time.
Oh no.
Yeah. So I have another story, or another connection I can make with the story. And this is when Miss Viola Swamp comes in, and the students, Miss Nelson has already been missing for one day, and they've missed her for a long time. So wiggle your fingers if you have ever missed someone that was special to you. Very good. I'm also wiggling my fingers too, because one time my parents went on vacation without me, and I was very sad I had to stay with my grandparents. All right, the last connection I can make is when the students wanted to go and find Miss Nelson. So they first went to Detective Smoggs, to his office, the police department.
Mm-hmm.
They also went into Miss Nelson's house to see if she was home. And they also thought maybe she got eaten by sharks, but that was not likely. So I can tell you about a time I missed something that I lost. I remember I missed my favorite little stuffed animal named Willie. I got him at SeaWorld when I was 4. And I couldn't find him, and I had to sleep with him every night. But eventually someone found it for me when I went to find it, and he was under the couch. I'm so glad I found him, or I would have been so sad. Okay, and these are all the connections I can make, but there's also many other connections I could have made as well. But these are just 3 examples. I was very sad when I missed Willie, my whale, so that had the same feeling as a character. I was telling you about a time something similar happened to me, and tell you what the story reminds me of. Now, since we have talked about this, I would like to dismiss you guys to independent reading, but I want you to remember, good readers make good connections to stories to help them understand the plot and the characters and the setting. So now, students with green eyes may be dismissed to go get it. Now students with brown eyes, and now students with blue eyes. Let's get reading.